save lives.
Muad, do you think that the essence and the meaning of Ramadan can be maintained during the lockdown?
Absolutely. I think it's the essence of Ramadan is also to give others. I think that's what we do also. That we had a lot of food, boxes and food banks that we sent to people who are unfortunate now. We have, meals and food. So I think in time here we have, between 10 to 100 food boxes that we sent to people. I think that's the spirit of Ramadan, to give and to be with the unfortunate people also. I think that also the spiritual month that we, to be with the need people who have no food or, unfortunate, to have a decent meal this time.
Zainab, is there any special advice for eating with regards to people who perhaps are recovering from symptoms of coronavirus or who develop symptoms of coronavirus but are well enough to stay at home? Is there a relaxation then on the guidance on a fasting for that?
Well, every year, regardless of whether we're in a pandemic or not, individuals who are unbound, physically or mentally, or the elderly and frail, are always exempt from fasting. I think this year, particularly with the pandemic, it's really important for those who are feeling unwell, for those who feel that their health might be at risk, to take the necessary precautions and abstain from fasting.
And that's something that that's advice that you're giving as well, Roy?
Absolutely. That's also what God has to also if you are sick or have any medicine and any advice from doctors, and God will advise you not to fast or you have any health medicine or any pregnancy or anything that cannot fast, so it's not you are exempt from that.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ryan O'Day from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in Israel, and also Zainab Sulmani. Thank you for the Muslim Council. Let's go around on some of today's other news now, and the governor of California has ordered a statewide check back to December to see if there are previously undetected COVID-19 related deaths. It comes after officials confirmed the first death from the disease in the United States took place there in early February, but was mistaken for flu. China has reported a sixth consecutive day of no new coronavirus deaths. There were 10 new positive tests in the last 24 hours. That's down from 30 on yesterday's total. And China also said it found just 6 new imported cases of people coming to China from overseas. That's compared to 23 on the day before. Jimmy McGee was one of the nurses who cared for the UK Prime Minister when he was being treated in intensive care at St Thomas's Hospital earlier this month. Boris Johnson said she was one of 2 nurses who stood by his bedside for 48 hours when things could have gone either way. Ms. McGee, who's from New Zealand, has been speaking to TV New Zealand about her experience.
There's a lot of media interest about him being in hospital, and to be honest, that probably was the toughest thing with a lot. He was just another patient that we were trying to get our best for. So it was business as usual.
So were you a little bit nervous?
No, I honestly don't think I was. When I got in the car after work each night and I could hear things about Boris Johnson on the news, that was very surreal because I thought, wow, I've just been looking after him. But I really wasn't fazed by looking after Boris Johnson.
And what about in terms of high security? Do you think they lowered the bar just to better convenience?
No, everyone, we take it very seriously who comes into intensive care. These patients who come into us, it's a very scary thing for them. So we don't take it lightly, and he absolutely needs to be there.
Talk to us about how you found out with Jenny from New Zealand.
Well, we just chatted away and it just naturally came up. He was interested in where I came from and what my story was. And we spent a lot of time together in it. So we talked away about New Zealand.
Being lauded not just by Britain's case, but also New Zealand cases in Cinderella. What went through your mind?
So on the night that it all happened, I actually had to turn my phone off because it was just so overwhelming. And when I turned my phone back on in the morning, people were like, Jenny, you need to look at your Facebook. And I was being called a snob for not responding to the Cinderella. But it's very surreal. I have a message from Lucinda. She's a hero of mine. I think she's amazing. And she just said how proud she was of me. The country was so proud. It's so heartwarming and something I'll never forget.
And you respond to the kind of stuff?
Yes, I responded and she messaged back immediately. A little bit of banter, which was again surreal. A couple of emojis. So yeah, it's just a very, very surreal experience.
What are the biggest challenges or issues that you are facing today?
Right now, the pandemic. It's so tough out there at the moment. You know, we're being asked to look after more patients than we normally do. And it's tough. These patients are quite complex when they come in. COVID's not just affecting the lungs, it's affecting many systems in the body. So they're complex, very, very unwell patients that are coming through. And we're overwhelmed by patients. And we're just doing our best to save as many lives as we can. So we're putting in the hours, we're working long hours, and we're physically exhausted, but it's also taking an emotional strain on us as well.
And that was Nurse Jenny McGee. We're just hearing that the Business Secretary here in the UK, Alok Sharma, has said that he is going to be shortly announcing measures to protect high street businesses from what he calls aggressive rent demands during the COVID-19 pandemic. Appearing before MPs on the Business Committee, he said, "I'm certainly aware that certain landlords are putting undue financial pressure with aggressive debt recovery tactics. I will look to introduce temporary measures on this issue, which will ease commercial rent demands and protect the UK high street." Asked if he would make the announcement about the details within the next week, he said, "I hope even sooner than that." Now the headlines on BBC News for you. And the first human trials in the UK for a coronavirus vaccine are starting at Oxford University today, a stage which can often take years to reach. UK government scientific advisors look set to say the public should not wear medical face masks, but should feel free to cover their faces with scarves. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel says Germany should be prepared to pay more into the EU's budget to help foster economic recovery, as European Union leaders prepare to thrash out a huge financial rescue package worth over €500 billion. Now, Phil Neville is to step down as the England women's manager next summer, which means a replacement will be needed for the postponed Euro 2021 tournament, now taking place in 2022. Let's get more details from our sport.
Good morning, Abdullah. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Foskett. How are you?
Very well. How are you? I'm live.
Yes, I can see you. And today, Chef Kak is in the class. So, Chef Harsh will be moderating Dr. Foskett. He'll just say hello to you from his number.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah. Great. Yeah.
Done. Thank you.
Okay.
Right,
So we'll start at 11.
Right.
Yeah. No problem. Great.
Yes,
Okay.
we start at 11.
Yeah. Great. Good.
Right, Dr. Foskett.
Good.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Good morning, everyone. Let's start by saying it's a wonderful day in London, and the sun is shining. We're looking for a positive future. We're all in lockdown, but that's not going to be forever. It's very positive. We have to be very positive. And I always say, we start off by saying the future is bright. The future is IAHM. And that's what we must always remember. The career that you've got ahead of you is a fantastic career, and we will get out of this. So this morning, I'm going to talk about production capability, and then we're going on to the consumer product relationship. And I hope you find this helpful. So there are organizations that talk a lot about the customer, which is important, and then completely neglect the people that deal with the customer, the employees. And this is what we call production capability. The machines, the people that serve the customer. So this we call the production capability principle, is to treat your employees exactly as you want them to treat your customers. Happy employees equals happy customers. Very simple, but often managers forget this. And you must never forget this. So we've got the PC, production capability balance. And this is based on the work of Dr. Stephen Covey in America. And it's based on Aesop's fable of the goose that laid the golden eggs. Production versus production capability. We looked at production planning last week, but we've got to look at how capable the machines and the people are to produce the goods and services for the customer. Now, when people fail to respect the production capability balance in their use of physical assets in organizations, they decrease the organizational effectiveness and often leaves others with dying geese. Because the fable was that the Aesop's fable is the farmer, for example, found that the goose laid a golden egg. And what he did was he kept pushing the goose, feeding it more so it laid more golden eggs. At the end of the day, it died. You kill the goose that laid the golden eggs. You overwork them. Yeah? Yeah. So this is very important. So we have to concentrate on the golden eggs. Yeah. So most people see effectiveness from the golden egg paradigm. The more you produce, the more you do, the more effective you are. But that's not true. You have to have a striking balance. The more you produce, the more you do, the more effective you are. That's what a lot of people think, but it's not entirely true. Let me give you an example. The PC balance is particularly important as it applies to the human assets of an organization. So your staff are equally important as your customers. The customers and employees, equal importance. Example, and this is a very good example. A restaurant, which is serving excellent lunch dishes, is packed every day with customers. Very famous restaurant, packed every day. And then the owner decides to sell the business. He sells the business. But the chefs remain working. They're still in the business, but there's a new owner, which always people fear. But the new owner wants to focus on golden eggs, making more money, cutting costs. He then tells the chefs to cheapen the recipes, use less cream, less wine. For a month, the costs go down and the revenue goes up. Profits increase dramatically. And what has he got? He's got golden eggs. But do the golden eggs last? However, little by little, the customers disappear. The quality is not the same. The trust is gone. The customers have lost their trust in the business and it dwindles to nothing. And what does the new owner do? The new owner tries desperately to reclaim the business, try to bring back the customers, but he neglected the customers, violated their trust, and lost the asset of customer loyalty. Another example. A person is in charge of a machine in a factory. He's eager, or she is eager to impress on his or her supervisors. He works hard, works the machines hard. The company goes into rapid growth stage. Promotions are fast, so he or she produces optimum levels. No downtime, no rest, no maintenance, full on. The machines run day and night, golden eggs. The production is phenomenal. Costs go down, profits go high. Within a short time, the person with the machine is promoted. Golden eggs. He or she's found his golden egg. But then you take over. You are the successor. You're next in the job. You've inherited a machine that hasn't had any maintenance. It's sick. It's a sick goose. It's rusty. It starts to break down. You have no alternative but to invest in maintenance and downtime. Costs go up, profits go down. And who gets the blame for the loss of the golden eggs? You do. Your predecessor, the person before you, has liquidated the asset by accounting system only, but the accounting system only reports production costs and profits. This is very, very poor management. So production capability is very, very important. There is no more goose to produce the golden eggs. Effectiveness lies in the balance, the PC, the production, and the production capability balance. The production of desired results, the golden eggs, which is production capability. The ability or asset that produces the golden eggs. There has to be a balance. Yeah? So this story, and it's a famous work of Dr. Stephen Covey in America. The effectiveness is a function of two things: what is produced and the producing asset or capability to produce, which is the machine or the person or the machine. Look after them. Yeah. So if you adopt a pattern of life that just focuses on golden eggs, on profit, you neglect your machines, you neglect your employees, the goose, you soon be without the asset that produced the golden eggs. Machines break down. Staff, employees, chefs become stressed, overwork, they go off sick. On the other hand, if you take care of your machines, of your staff, of your employees, it's important that you look after staff and machines. If you take care of them, if you like, they are the goose, with no aim towards golden eggs, you soon won't have the withdrawal to feed yourself or the goose. So there's a balance. I repeat that. On the other hand, if you take care of the goose, the machines, the staff, with no focus on production, no proper production planning, you soon won't have the wherewithal to feed yourself or the goose. So it's a question of balance. And that is the key thing of what balance is about, to achieve this excellence. So what is excellence? What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. It's our ability to balance, to look after machines, look after people, but focus on customers. The things which matter most never be at the mercy that things that matter least. Balance. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellent then is not an act, it's a habit. We must have this habit of looking after, of balancing, of looking after machines, looking after people. So basically, there's a lot to be learned from Dr. Stephen Covey. And now we want to go on to the customer relationship with the product. So it's called the customer product relationship. Now, this is a huge subject. We may not finish it all today. We'll go on to next week, because I'm sure you will, for example, will want a break. So remember the balance between satisfying the customer, happy employees, team building, and looking after the machines, the kitchens, etc., the restaurant. Respecting. Now, we have to continuously consider the customer. Consumers of food and beverage products are increasingly sophisticated. We know when we go into the high street, we see many, many different types of food outlets, service outlets, complex, dynamic. And this all takes into account the psychology of people eating, the sociology of people together, the social psychology, the geography, the anthropology, all identify the behavior of individuals and groups, why people go to certain restaurants. And what we have to do when we plan a restaurant outlet, we have to examine the human needs, wants, and demands, understand the human condition of what people want, their goals and their values. Economics focuses on the examination of the human condition as it relates to commercial business world, through the examination of the allocation of scarce resources and the link between supply and demand. But the human condition is about what we have to understand when we develop menus, when we develop concepts. Marketing focuses on the human condition as it relates to products, the study of the consumer. Kotler explains that marketing is managing markets to attract profitable customers' relationships through identifying their needs and designing good product offerings. Now, many chefs, for example, set up restaurants because they can cook. They can't necessarily manage, they can't necessarily run a business. But what they fail always to do, in many cases, is identify the consumer needs. The consumer is the actual link. Without the consumer, there is no link between the human needs and the food and beverage products. A product simply is a consumer need, a satisfied need. One thing that we all have in common is this: we are all consumers. Every one of us is a consumer. We consume something. We may consume different things, but we all consume something. People who do not consume are not consumers, but we're all consumers. We all buy something. We go into a shop. We go into a supermarket. And this is understanding customers. For example, families who eat 4 times a year in a motorway service area are consumers of motorway service area food and beverage, even if they are rarely consume this product. But they are potential consumers of many other existing food and beverage products. But at present are consumers of only one product from a vast range available. But they are not consumers of the rest. So we can consume one thing one day, we can consume something once or twice a year, but we consume many other products. They may have an unsatisfied food and beverage need, but a product is unavailable to them which is not yet satisfied that need. Now, what that's telling us is there are many people, there could be many people out there where there is not a food and beverage product that has actually satisfied their need. There's not a restaurant, a food outlet that yet has satisfied their need. And that's what market researchers are looking at all the time. Now, when consumers are discussed, they are often addressed as large groups, comprising millions of people who they are when all added together. But when consumers are examined in detail, they are certainly not homogeneous. They're individuals. They consume or choose not to consume millions of products in a very dynamic and rapidly changing way. And that means that the consumer we can identify a group, but within that group, there are differences. So if we say, well, there's a group of youngsters 25 to 35, for example, and they like to go to bars and they like to eat more casual, but within that group, there are preferences for certain types of food, more vegan, more vegetarian, more spicy. And that's what we have to look at each marketing group. There are individuals who group together to form a market or particular product. This market grouping may range from 300 people, as in a small rural exclusive restaurant, or up to and beyond 300 million people for a worldwide brand like McDonald's. So McDonald's group is, say, 300 million people. The local restaurant is 300 people. Who do we want our customers or consumers to be? And we have to look at this very fundamental question. People open restaurants often for vanity reasons, because they like to be an owner of a restaurant. But they haven't looked at a group and they've got no idea who their consumers are. But you have to ask the fundamental question: who do you want our consumers to be? It is also true that same consumers will group together at different times depending on needs they have at that time. But the question for food and beverage managers, because a chef is a food and beverage manager, a chef is a production manager. Yeah? Who do we want our consumers to be? And you have to fundamentally ask that question. Because it's all about consumers. It's very much about who we are targeting our restaurant at. We have achieved our objective of creating a consumer that fits our product. So we can create a consumer that fits our product. However, even if such a desirable state exists, the nature of the consumer is constantly changing, as I said before. And as such, management need to understand their consumers and how changes are taking place with effect from customer or consumer choices. Now, it is a clear argument. It is a clear argument for the establishment of a customer-orientated business. The first key issue is the framework is therefore centered around consumers. It must be all centered around consumers. So think about a product. Consider a product. What? Now that's a good one. I just had a question. What is a niche market? A niche market is when you've identified a small group of consumers who want a typical type of restaurant. Yeah, that satisfied their need. It's not the mass market. McDonald's is not a niche market. But for example, Le Gavroche in London, the Roux Brothers restaurant in London, the Waterside Inn, a Roux Brothers restaurant, they're niche markets. They're very small consumer base. So when we look at the Roux brand, they only have 2 50-seater restaurants. It's a niche market. When we look at casual dining and the global chains, they're looking at the mass market. So a niche market is a small group of consumers that can afford that particular restaurant, but also want that particular type of food and service. That's what we call a niche market. So you could say, my consumer is people in the range of 30 to 60 who have got a very high disposable income, who can actually afford this type of dining. And that will be a very niche market. And Michelin star restaurants are niche markets. Yeah. And that's where people make big mistakes, because Michelin star some of them are very, very niche markets. They only have a small database of customers. Now, the problem we're going to have coming out of lockdown is, will some of these Michelin star restaurants survive? Because they're such a niche market. And that's a big problem. That's going to be the biggest issue coming out of lockdown. Will some of these Michelin star restaurants survive? Large corporate restaurants, casual, will survive. The pret-a-mangers, the Subways, they're going to survive. They will survive. But will some of the Michelin stars survive? It'd be very interesting to see, because they are such a niche, small market. The key issues concerning the nature of demand for food and beverage products are identified using a well-validated, if somewhat oversimplified, list of questions. So who are our customers, guests, or members? For example, we ask the question, who are the consumers of the food and beverage product? What food and beverage product do they want? Why do they want a food and beverage product? Do they want a food and beverage product? When do they want it? What time of day? Do they want it right through the day? So all day dining? Where do they want a food and beverage product? Do they want home delivery? Do they want to dine in the restaurant? How do they obtain a food and beverage product? How do they obtain it? May well be we're going to see a lot more online booking in the future. And the most important thing, which a lot of companies don't get right, is the product. Getting the food and service offer right. So the questions can be explored individually, but the only one is key is what products do consumers want? That's the key question. Who, why, where, when, and how are all the part of the product and are inherent in answering the question as the nature of the product consumers actually want. Who, why, where, when, and how are all the part of the products and inherent in answering the question to the nature of the products that consumers really want. So I've got a question. What are your reviews towards the bonus? I don't know what you mean by bonus, but I mean bouncing back of the hotel industry after lockdown. Well, the recovery after lockdown is going to be slow. I think it's a less of a problem in India because of domestic tourism is very strong in India. In the UK, it's much weaker. And after lockdown, it's going to be a very slow process. And many of the 5-star hotels in London, which rely on overseas guests, are going to be, I wouldn't say in trouble, but they're going to find the market very, very difficult. I think India is in a much stronger position than the UK in bouncing back hotels than the UK. I mean, the UK hotel restaurants, many of them struggle anyway because people stay in the hotels, they want to go out to restaurants. So that's why they bring in celebrity chefs into the restaurants to lock people in to the restaurant. So they use the restaurant in the hotel. They've tried that, but many people like to go out. And I think the hotels it's going to be a very, very difficult time in the UK, less so in India because domestic tourism is so strong in India. So India has a much less of a problem than the UK, as I see it. With regard to the cheaper hotels in the UK, the budget hotels, they will have less of a problem because they're more used. They're used by domestic tourism, domestic business, whereas your 5-star, 4-star are very much dependent on overseas. So I hope that answers the question. Now, we have to be very systematic in developing the consumer product relationship. The two key issues, the consumer and the product, can be examined by expanding them to identify their component parts. The component parts of two frameworks represents tasks required in order to identify the product and the consumer relationship, matching the product to the consumer. So the consumer, first of all, to explain this, the consumer, we have to do market research. Market research leads to market groups or market segmentation, and then we identify that market. Now, market research will identify the products that these particular groups want. Concept development We then have to find what kind of eating experience do they want. And then we have to look at quality management. Yeah, how to manage the quality. Now, it's very interesting. There's lots of discussions going on in the UK at the moment about, for example, the future of education. Students are consumers of education. What do they want to see in the future? And I've had numerous discussions that the product is often doesn't match what the students want. When I talk to students, they want more online learning. They don't want the traditional classroom. In fact, I went to Lithuania, and in Lithuania University, they had beanbags in one classroom and iPads, and they were all learning from iPads and beanbags, and the tutor was in the center. More online learning, more interaction online. Many students say to me, you ask us all year to word process our work, but then at the end of the year, you ask us to write an exam. Why can't we do it on computer? That's going to come. It doesn't happen at the moment because of cheating, but it's going to come. Education will change because the consumer, the student, is different. We live in a very different world, and we have to match the consumer on the product to the consumer and the consumer to the product. So for the consumer, we have to set clear goals. We have to set clear goals, setting goals and objectives for the consumer, creation of a satisfied consumer. And we have to create a product, and we have to promote that product. What are the factors we need to consider on making the business stable after lockdown? Well, I think now this is what I'm being asked all the time. What are the factors we need to consider on making the business stable after lockdown? Yeah. Now, what this is after lockdown, I'm saying to companies, you have to reinvent yourself, reinvent your brand. Yeah. Become new, become exciting, stimulate the consumer. But at the same time, look what the consumer wants. They won't have the same amount of money, disposable income to spend. So look at your menus, cut your costs, give more discounts, get more people through the door, through the day, not necessarily at lunchtime because of social distancing. So you say we have sit-ins at 1 o'clock, we have sit-ins at 12 o'clock. Then we have another sit-in at 1:30. Then another sit-in at 2:30. Then another sit-in at 3:30. So that's how you've got to stagger the day to survive over lockdown. But reinvent yourself as all-day dining. What does the younger generation prefer? What are the latest trends in food industry? Well, the latest trend, the younger people, I can tell you, the younger people are going for vegan, plant-based food, more casual dining, more informal. The younger people are not into fine dining. Fine dining is such a small percentage of the market, yet it gets the greatest amount of publicity. Michelin star restaurants, celebrity chef, greatest publicity. But it's such a small part of the hospitality market. And young people want more casual, more vegan, more vegetarian. Yeah. And they are the trends in the restaurant industry. And now the consumer and product framework. The various component parts of consumer and the product may be merged together to form a single development framework. As this single framework then provides a basis for systematic approach to the development of the consumer product relationship. Although this framework can give the impression that it is a set of list of tasks which are performed chronologically, in practice these tasks will be performed simultaneously. Additionally, this is not a one-off process. It is a dynamic and organic process which any food and beverage operation is continuously engaged. And I'll explain on that. Based on the questions you received, do you think we have the right thinking process? How should it change? Yeah, no. Can I say that your questions are fantastic? You're thinking logically. You're thinking rationally. So your thinkings are so important. So important. Because you are the future generation. You've got to go out there and make this work. Remember, as I keep saying to you, the future's bright. The future is IAHM because you're asking the right questions. You are the future. You're thinking right. So well done. Give yourself a pat on the back. And again, what are these frameworks? Market research. Talking to one another. Talking to your customers. Identifying potential markets. Idea evaluation. Come up with ideas. Now all think about ideas about a restaurant. Start thinking about ideas about restaurant. How do you want to see, as young people, how do you want to see restaurants change for your benefit? What kind of concepts do you want for your benefit? And then the restaurant designers have to set goals and objectives to meet your expectations. What are your expectations when you go into a restaurant? And then we have to develop food product development. Lots of what in lockdown now, what I would be doing as a restaurant is creating different food products. Use your time wisely to create food products. New food, new brands. The lockdown is over. This is the future. And then put in quality management systems. Put together sales promotion. Use media. And you have to literally create the product. Create the product. Now, I've been asked another question. What do you think about the jobs amidst the lock? Well, first of all, don't worry about jobs at the moment. In the UK, hospitality is completely closed down. Hotels are closed, restaurants are closed, bars are closed, pubs are closed. But it's all going to open up. Might be slow, but it will open up. And there'll be plenty of jobs. There'll be plenty of jobs throughout the world. As I keep saying, we've come through 2 world wars. Yeah? There's plenty of food in the shops at present. The food chain goes on. We will come out of this. Don't worry, because the human spirit has an insatiable appetite to travel. And people will want to travel again. People are annoyed, frustrated in the UK that they can't go on holiday. There was an interview where a couple had spent £20,000 to try and get their family on holiday to Japan. We were going to take the whole family to Japan. And people want to go to these places. They want to go to beyond, the Europeans want to go beyond Europe. Because where it's all happening, in terms of culture, in terms of color, is to Asia. So you've got nothing to worry about. Yeah? Once the lockdown's over, they will be recruiting staff across the world. But we have to get the product right. We have to get the product that people want right. So we have to do market research. We have to look at the resources available. Consumer panels, tasting panels. It's important. You know, when chefs put a new dish on the menu, they don't ask the customers to taste it. They should ask their regular customers to come and taste the dishes. Let's have a tasting morning. Bring your customers in, do a tasting. Ask the consumers what they would like to see on the menu, and is there a favourite dish they would like? Questionnaires, social media, market information, what we know about the market and the trends. We look at specialist publications and internet information. Always go on the internet and see what's going on around the world. And I think we have a lot to learn from one another. And Europe has a lot to learn in terms of food from Asia. There's a lot of untapped ingredients, quality in Asia that the Europeans just do not know about. And I think there's a lot for us to learn from one another. And we have to look at what is the nature? What is the nature of this demand? What's the valuable? Is it valuable? Is it available? Is it affordable? And whatever we create must be affordable. How much people have got in their pocket, their disposable income. Now, when we look, for example, when we look at a lot of restaurants now and what they were charging, if they are wise when they come out of lockdown, they will reduce their prices. They will show that they have empathy with the consumer and the lack of money that will be around. And there will be a lack of money. There won't be the same amount of money around when we come out of lockdown, but it will gradually pick up. And if I was a restaurateur, I say, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate after lockdown. Let's create menus that celebrate after lockdown. We've come through this, and get the spirit of people together, togetherness. So it's all about product, but price. Now, if you look at, for example, another question. What are some of the important things which we will have to observe and implement in restaurants after lockdown? Well, after lockdown, in the UK, and I've listened to all the debates, and hygiene is going to be the biggest thing, hand washing. And when you go into a restaurant, there should be, in my view, in future, a sanitizer. So when you go into a restaurant, you go to reception, there's a sanitizer. When you go to a hotel, as soon as you arrive off a plane, you get to the reception, you sanitize your hands. That's going to be a real big issue. People will want to go to restaurants that they know that they're clean. Yeah? So I would say in my restaurant, this is our procedures for sanitizing. We spray the restaurant with sanitizer. You can get sanitizing sprays every 2 hours, like they do on some planes. So that's going to be the key issue after lockdown, the important thing. And also price. Price is going to be a real key issue. And people won't want to sit close together. So we've got to space it out. Space the tables out more. Lose some seats, but have extra sittings to make up for that loss. And they're going to be key issue. The product has got to match the price. You've got to promote your restaurant reopening, and you've got to make big advantage of the place, location, and the availability. So the availability of ingredients is going to be, because there may well be a short supply of certain ingredients. So a lot to think about, a hell of a lot to to think about. So consumers have a variety of goals. First of all, they can include esteem, self-esteem. I'm comfortable with the restaurant. Status. I go to certain restaurants for status. Attention. Entertainment. I go there because I want to be seen. I go there because it's entertainment. I go to a restaurant for privilege, relaxation, intimacy, romance, taking your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your wife, your husband. Convenience. We go to certain restaurants for convenience. The need to eat. The psychological comfort. I feel comfortable in this restaurant. And of course, a lot of restaurants like Pret-a-Manger, Subway, is to satisfy hunger and thirst. So when we talk about restaurants, it's not about cooking and waiting. It's about these complex issues of understanding the consumer and why people dine in certain restaurants. It's a huge area of psychology, of sociology, of market research. For example, a consumer may perceive a takeaway like Subway, McDonald's as providing greater convenience, as being less expensive than an upmarket a la carte restaurant, who are going to struggle after lockdown. But the restaurant may be perceived as providing greater attention, level of service, and a higher level of esteem and status. So a Michelin star restaurant is about status. It's a higher level of esteem. The consumer will make a choice as to which is the most satisfying product for their particular goal at that time. How are island economies like Australia, New Zealand different as compared to European, American, and Asian economies? Well, this is a very difficult question because when you're on island, for example, you have to import a lot of materials, and that's costly. Yeah, so you're much more dependent. America is almost self-sufficient. It's probably one of the most self-sufficient countries in the world, and they can have a strong economy. But so many countries are so dependent on other countries, and we and Europeans, we in the UK, are so dependent on our food coming from Europe, and that affects our economy. Asia is in a much better position for growth than Europe at this present time, once we come out of lockdown. With many students graduating this year, what should freshers keep in mind for notable performance and making a distinctive with many students graduating this year, what should freshers keep in mind? Well, first of all, graduating this year, your first thing you do is say, well done. Thank you, IAHM. You have secured my future. And what you should do is have self-belief. Self-belief, confidence, but not overconfidence. But go out there and use the knowledge that you have gained through IAHM. Be yourself. Most important thing, be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else. But have self-belief. You can do it. You've got all this applied knowledge. Go out there and use it. And your personality is important because you are a brand. You have to develop your brand. You have to develop your image with the knowledge that you've gained from IIHM. You are unique, and that is not your CV, that is your brand. If a consumer's goal is set prioritizes food and convenience and variety, different food and beverage products may satisfy them in different ways. So, for example, if I want to go out and just satisfy my hunger, I go to Pret a Manger, Subway, whatever. I might even go to McDonald's. Hardly, but I may. But if I want to entertain and impress and so on, I go to a Michelin star restaurant. So I've got a different goal at different times, and I, as a consumer, use different food and beverage outlets. So a consumer like me with this goal set may satisfy these goals with a fish and chip shop, fast food, sandwich bar. Whereas another consumer may satisfy the same goal in a public house meal. They may go to a pub. So I, as a consumer, may go to a sandwich bar. Another consumer with the set hunger and thirst may go to a pub or may go to a cafe. So this is where we have different, as consumers, we have different goals. So depending on their needs at the time, an individual may prioritize convenience when purchasing coffee and croissants on the way to work in the morning, and prioritize low price at lunchtime when purchasing a meal in a workplace restaurant, and high levels of service entertainment when purchasing a celebration meal in the evening. So we have different, as consumers, we have different goals. We may grab a coffee on the way to work, a low price meal at lunchtime, but then we pay a lot more in the evening for a celebration birthday meal. So we have different priorities. These priorities will also change during an individual's life cycle, and his or her needs and wants will also change in relation to circumstances. As we get older, we change our priorities and we change our circumstances. So this is why the consumer is forever changing. Now, from youth to old age, individuals may desire a nightclub in their youth, a fast food outlet when they have young children, and a reduced price product for a pensioner in their old age. So as we go through life's journey, our food and product requirements differ. And that is the journey. And as individuals, we have a food and beverage product journey. Remember that. You, as young people, will change as you go through your journey. And additionally, consumers may give different importance to the same product or parts of a product. One individual may value silver service because it's perceived as increasing status of the organisation, while others may not value silver service because it makes them feel uncomfortable and unusual situation. And that's true. A lot of young people don't like formal dining. They prefer casual dining because it suits their personality. Will this lockdown situation affect on the compensation of employees? Well, inevitably it will. Different countries have different ways of dealing with the lockdown. In the UK, the government has said they will furlough, which means they will pay 80% of an employee's salary up to $2,500 a year. Inevitably, the government will have to intervene to actually cover some of the losses to employees, to businesses. This is a very, very expensive lockdown for government, unprecedented in our time. And different governments have different ways of dealing with it. Germany has announced a massive bailout for Europe. they're going to contribute more to the European Union to bail out Europe. But one thing you've got to remember, that after lockdown, things will be different. Yeah? It's going to take a while to gradually get over this stormy seas. So at the moment, nothing's happening. We'll go after lockdown, there'll be waves. Before we get to the calm waters, that's going to take a little while. But you, as young people, have much to look forward to. Because you, as young people, have a great future. And the world will open up. This time next year, you'll say, hopefully it'll all be over. Things will almost reach normality this time next year. Yeah. And we'll be back to, in UK, skill shortages and trying to encourage more people to come into the hospitality industry. So, yes, governments will have to compensate. And the world has to work together on this, because this is not a one country problem. This is across the globe. You know, Panama, unheard of country. Panama, this one, is gone into another 30-day lockdown. How are meal boxes different? Well, meal boxes, for example, you have to identify what the consumer wants in a meal box. Whether the meal box is for people unemployed or meal box for people who are at work, they don't have to be different. They have to contain what the consumer. Don't put in a meal box something that someone's not going to eat, for example. So you have to find out what the basics of a meal box, and you have to ask people, what do you want? It's a simple question. Ask people, what do they want? Price, cost, value, worth and value. Although values are attached to various products, because of the perception of the needs it can satisfy, the ability to realize those goals is different on the ability to pay. But payment is not just about having the required amount of money. Choices are also made by considering the relationship between price, cost, what it costs you, the price, worth, what's it worth to someone, and are they getting value for money? Now let's just look at what we mean by price, cost, worth. Price is the amount of money required to purchase the product. That's the price. The cost includes, as well as price, the cost of not going somewhere else, the cost of transport and time, the cost of potential embarrassment, the cost of having to look and behave in a required manner, and the cost in terms of effort at work to earn money to pay the required price. So we have a cost. Do we travel? Yeah. Is it embarrassing to pay that price? That's the cost. That's the human cost. Yeah. Worth is a perception of the desirability of a product over another in order to satisfy a set of established goals. Is it worth it? Do I perceive that that is worth the money? For example, if I go to Pret-a-Manger, I buy a coffee at 99 pence, £1. That's worth it. Yeah. The cost, because the Pret-a-Manger is next to the Starbucks. The Starbucks is £2.50. But if the Pret-a-Manger was a mile away, yeah, the cost of me traveling there is not worth it. So I go to Pret-a-Manger and pay over double the amount of price for coffee. This is what you've got to look at: price, cost, and worth. Yeah. Value. What do we mean by value? Value is not only the personal estimate of a product's capacity to provide the benefits which satisfy a set of goals, it is also the perception of a balance between worth and cost. Was it worth it? Yeah. Now, we do not buy products as such. We buy benefits. So when we buy something, it has to have a benefit. I buy petrol because the benefit is it gets me to work. I wear a sweater because it keeps me warm. We don't buy anything unless it has a benefit. Value for a good food and beverage operator, where the worth is perceived as greater than the cost, and poor value is where the costs are perceived as greater than the worth. So that's what we look at value. Just repeat that. Good value for a food and beverage operator is where the worth is perceived as greater than the costs. The cost of me going somewhere else. The cost of not being embarrassed. And poor value is where the costs are perceived as greater than the worth. Now, there are many different ways to segment a market. And food and beverage operators will try different segment variables in an attempt to identify the needs, the different segment variables to identify the needs, wants, demands of possible market groupings. These variables are usually grouped using the following 4 criteria: geographical segmentation, demographic segmentation, psychological segmentation, and behavioral segmentation. Now, I think this is probably, we've had an hour, this is probably a good place to stop. And we can talk about all this next week, and we'll start next week on geographical segmentation. Now, are there any final questions before we sign off? And next week we'll start on geographical segmentation of the food and beverage product, which is very interesting. Any questions, Chef Harsh? Any questions? Okay, now, can I just say to you all, I look forward to next week. I think we've covered a lot this morning. Thank you for your questions. Remember, be positive. We're going to get through this, as I keep saying. And what we're saying is, let's say, when we sign off, let's just say, the future's bright, the future's IAHM, you are the future. The future's bright, the future's IAHM, you are the future. Thank you for listening, and next week we'll start on geographical segmentation. Okay? Take care, and I look forward to next week.